good.
Awesome, we're recording.
Hey, what's this thing called again? Is it called the Talky Happy Hour? Or is it the Talky Podcast? Or is it the Talky Podcast Happy Hour?
I think it's the Talky Drinky, actually.
The Talky Drinky.
Drinky. So no, it's actually, it's Talky Podcast.
Talky Podcast.
Talking about the worlds of sales, marketing, technology, business strategy, entrepreneurship, how they interact.
You know what? I would say cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So what is it you're drinking right? Well, you take your drink, you take mine, and then tell me what you're drinking.
Okay. I am drinking some tequila Añejo.
Okay.
And it's Bribon. I don't know. That's not the right accent. That's not Spanish. Bribon. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I think that's Bribon.
Bribon.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know how much you know about the world of tequila. I don't know a lot about tequila, but I know a little bit. And the little bit I know is there's like tequila blanco, which is tequila that has not been aged essentially.
Right.
And then there's tequila reposado, which is aged like 1 to 3 years, maybe.
Yep.
And then there's añejo, which is aged the longest. Right.
Yeah.
And so I have been getting into tequila reposado, not knowing that there are these 3 types and not knowing what I was getting into.
Yeah.
But I was finding myself really enjoying it. And so then I look up and I read, and then it says, there's the next level, which is añejo. So then I had to try that. And guess what? It is darn good.
Yeah. Those words I love those words in Spanish. The reposado has like it's related to the English word like repose, which means like to rest.
Okay. Yep.
And then añejo literally means aged.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. This is the main thing I know about tequila. This is the number one thing I know about tequila. I'm going to share it with you. The number one thing I know about tequila is that it sounds suspiciously close to tequila. That's all I know. So, okay. So are you drinking was it beer, Bribon? Are you drinking it straight on the rocks? Am I seeing that correctly?
Well, I'm drinking it on the rocks, not straight.
Okay.
But I'm drinking
water in there?
Well, the only water in there is when the ice melts. So,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, just right in it. What are you drinking today?
Okay, so this is a really interesting thing, and I owe it to my wife. This is a gin and tonic. It is the gin's reasonably good. It's the Bombay Sapphire gin, if you're familiar with that brand. And so what's happening though, if you see that that's not lime in there. Normally you would put a lime in there.
Yeah.
So then the whole gin and tonic thing is actually a product of my wife. So my wife is not much of a drinker. She actually grew up as a teetotaler. I'm sure something you can relate to.
Sure. Yeah.
Teetotaler, Baptist family, very, kind of very strict about that and very strong beliefs about that. And I respect that. Just don't happen to be mine.
Right.
But she kind of has changed a little bit in her age and has come to like one cocktail every once in a while. But so what happened was my stepmother, she made a gin and tonic for my wife, and she hadn't had one in a long time. And the key is you got to put the gin bottle in the freezer. The gin bottle's got to be super cold.
Right.
And so my wife had this gin and tonic with my stepmother, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." So I get her some Bombay Sapphire, and I make it for her. But then I realize we don't have any limes. And so, what is it? Invention is the mother of necessity. Invention is the mother of necessity. So what she does, she gets into the freezer and she pulls out what we have, which are frozen mangoes. As it turns out, a gin and tonic with frozen mangoes in it is pretty good.
That sounds really good.
That's what I'm having.
I wonder if it would work with mango ice pops, which is what I have in my freezer, ready for my kids, right? And so they're going to come back and be like, "Daddy, where are the mango ice pops?" Oh, sorry, I shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah. Daddy had to have some refreshment, kids. I'm sorry.
I needed my vitamin C. That's all it was.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's awesome. Well, cool. Let's talk about let's get to what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So we're talking about this podcast and why we're doing it. Right. And so I think part of why we're doing it is that you and I love to talk about the worlds of sales, marketing, technology, and business strategy and how they all interact.
Yep.
And, I think from your experience, definitely from mine, and I've done a wide variety of things. I live in the world of enterprise software development consulting right now, but, it doesn't really matter what kind of business you are. Most businesses are struggling with operating in silos and in not just with their business units or their people, right? But in these kind of departments specifically, right? And the strongest businesses operating together like an organism, right? I'm not going to be like a Baptist preacher quoting scripture at you here, but there's definitely some scripture, something about, you got to have the whole body, right? What is the head without the hands and the arms and the feet, right? They all got to work together. And so that's how it is with these worlds of sales, marketing, technology, business strategy. And I think it's fun to talk about. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. And so part of the, a lot of what resonates with me is just because I'm working right now, I'm kind of in the B2B entrepreneur space. And so we're working on scaling a business right now. And that's going well, but it's really challenging. It's kind of interesting. We have the story is often that every time that we would, we started business 8 years ago, and every time we would have some little bit of, like some kind of a benchmark that we would pass. Like I remember when we got our first printer. Literally, we bought our first printer in the office. I remember that. That was in the first year, and we would always say to ourselves, "Man, we're a real business now because we got a printer."
Right.
But along with that, I would always think, well, once we hit certain benchmarks, like once we hit a certain size of employees, or once we hit a certain amount of revenue or whatever, things will get easier. And that is not true. And one of the things that I've noticed about that is that part of why that's not true is because as you get larger, you become more departmentalized, and there are more silos. That communication and that collaboration between the silos is super critical, important. And so, we're talking about sales and marketing, but operations, which I am not an expert at. All of those kind of areas, HR even, that's becoming more of a thing now for us because we're getting from an employee size, like human resources, super important. And I didn't even give it a second. A year ago, I wasn't even thinking about it,
Well, it's one of those things where, like in all these domains, as your business grows, as your business scales, and you basically touched on this, you scale in those ways accidentally, not intentionally, right? It's not necessarily strategically, right? And probably you're thinking about a discrete problem. And because business is going well, and you're moving fast and you're growing, right? You got to solve that problem really as quickly as possible so you can move on to the next problem. So it's really hard to think about the interdependence, right, of all these different areas. So, I think some of the things that we're going to talk about are the ways in which some companies or businesses are being really smart about these things, right? How are they working interdependently, right? Like one living organism, really intelligently. That's fun, and I think it's noteworthy, right? Because I think, I haven't been in the world of entrepreneurship as much as you or as deeply as you have, but it's definitely something that I'm thinking about, right? Not just, okay, can I go out there and put together a business and sell something, right? But can I put together a business that scales? In all of these ways, right? Without giving myself a heart attack.
Yeah. I think the real question is, can you build, like the thing that I think about is how do you, how can you provide value to potential customers at scale? And that's the perennial problem,
right.
And a lot of that kind of how the silos, the organizational silos, how they interact with one another is a big part of that. So anyway,
so we're gonna try to talk about that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Great. And so do you want to talk? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say one quick question. I'm pretty sure this is the kind of podcast where we can drink while we're talking, right? It's not just our little drinky segment at the beginning, right?
No.
All throughout.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, as a matter of fact, I got to take a pause to go get a refill. So you give me just a second. I'll go get a refill.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My bad. My bad. That's bad prep work. Bad. I'm gonna edit this part out. So what I'm doing right now is pouring some Bombay Sapphire gin out of the freezer into my tub, my glass. And I already got the mango, so I'm gonna put a little bit of La Croix, which is doubling for soda water. You familiar with La Croix?
La Croix.
La Croix. I can't do a French R.
Yeah.
I can barely do an English R.
You can probably do a pretty good Spanish R, I would guess.
Every once in a while, yo puedo correr. Vamos a correr.
Y more importantly, comer.
Yeah. Comer, sí, claro. Tomar.
Comero. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Back.
Yeah. Hey, so can I tell you something? One of my favorite things in the world.
Yeah.
I love good books. And, readers are leaders. We heard that growing up. Or if we didn't hear it growing up, we learned it at some point in life, hopefully.
We should have.
And we should have. Right. And so I'm a big reader, and, you and I, we're in these worlds of entrepreneurship and marketing and business strategy and all the rest of that, technology. But I think it would be fair to say that at our hearts, we're both sales guys, right?
Oh, totally.
Right. We do a lot of other stuff, but we oftentimes come from the perspective of a sales guy, right? And so some of my favorite books, the books that resonate with me the most, are sales books. So in this Readers or Leaders segment, just wanted to chat a little bit about a couple ideas from a sales book I read probably 2 years ago. And it's Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human. And I don't know if I even asked you.
Him.
Have you? Yeah.
I love Big Danny Pink. Big Danny Pink's got it going on, man.
Does it really? Is he big in real life or just big in your heart?
No, he's intellectually big. No, so I saw him talk at the Inbound conference. He spoke at the Inbound Marketing Conference in Boston. I'm wanting to say it was 2017, maybe.
Okay.
Super fantastic. And even his books before, like he had a book before, and I wish I could remember what it's called. You probably know, but there's a concept that we use a lot in our organization, and it's this idea that every team member needs to have 3 things in order to feel fulfilled in their job and to have long-term success. And and those 3 things it is mastery, purpose, and autonomy. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So I'll give you the autonomy to do your job as you know how to do it. You're doing things that like maybe you've mastered them. Or maybe they stretch you a little bit, but and then the other one, I forgot what the other one was. Purpose, whatever, that doesn't matter. Anyway, sorry. To sell is human. Big Danny Pink.
Freud would say the one that you forget is the one that's most important for some reason, and that you have the most internal struggle and strife with. So purpose. We'll dig into that the next time in our Freud segment.
Oh, good. Psychoanalysis with Jake.
Exactly. So I've read the only other Daniel Pink book is the book on like the science of perfect timing, which is a really good book as well. That might be the subtitle. I think I'm forgetting the actual title, but this book, To Sell is Human, the main like idea from the book, isn't really what's most fascinating or interesting to me. Right. So like the main ideas of the book is he wants to talk about, A, B, and C, attunement, buoyancy, and clarity, right? These are these 3 ideas that he thinks are key to people being either successful or proficient in sales. And he makes the point that, everybody in many ways or in some ways are involved in sales if you're involved in persuading or influencing others to make a decision, right? So you may not be the sales guy at a software company, but if you're a developer and you work with an influencer, a technical influencer, buyer, motivator in that company, and you let them know, hey, listen, we could solve this problem if we had some more time, right? You're influencing them towards a sales, outcome, right? Well, so his things, attunement is your ability to experience things outside yourself, right? Your buoyancy is not being deterred by hearing no, right, or a soft no, or some sort of roadblock, and then clarity is, the ability to help other people see things in a clear way. So like all those things are really good and worthy of chatting about. But the takeaway from the book that has stuck with me the most is this Latin phrase that basically talks about the difference in the old world versus the new world when it comes to sales interactions. And so the first one is caveat emptor.
Buyer beware, baby.
Buyer beware, right? And so meaning buy at your own risk, right? Yeah. Like somebody knocks on your door, you open it up, and they have a set of steak knives, and they come to your kitchen table, and they show you how they can cut through a shoe, right? And you're like, wow, I'm going to buy those, right? And then the handle falls off, 3 hours later when the guy's got in his car and drove out down the way. Like buyer beware. You've got to do your own research, right? Right. You may not have the opportunity to do the research. The seller knows more than the buyer, right? Yeah. But now he says in today's marketplace, there's a different idea, which is caveat venditor.
That's right.
Which is seller beware.
That's right.
Which is the buyer might actually know more than the seller about your product, right? And so now it creates all sorts of new challenges, right? Where the seller, the salesperson, can be seen really as an obstacle towards the buyer.
Often,
somebody knows what they want. They know the features. They know if they're buying a set of steak knives, you come in, you say, I want those steak knives right there because I've researched them. I know everything about them. I'm going to go buy those steak knives, right? Now, you as a seller, you might actually have some information that'll be valuable to them, right? You might actually say, tell me what your needs are. Why do you need steak knives, right? Tell me how you're going to use them. How often do you use them, right? You might, as a salesperson, be able to get information from them that helps them make a better decision. But at times, no, that's not how it's going to work out, right? Because there's so much information out there so readily available. And so I'm just kind of, I feel like I see this play out at times, and I'm wondering if you see this or just what your reaction is.
Oh man, are you kidding? My entire business is based around this concept. Like I make reasonably healthy living building the assets that companies use in order to draw people in. Like you mentioned, like there's just tons of data out there, and salespeople, people oftentimes don't need to talk to a salesperson, or they don't need to talk to them as much because so much is available. They can self-guide themselves. They're on their computer, Googling away. I'm Googling everything I need to know right now. People do that, and that's the norm. It's actually not like this so much as it's actually the way it happens is it happens like this.
Yes,
that's happening on the phone. And so, so my entire business is predicated on the fact that buyers, modern buyers, the way that they want to buy is self-guided. They want answers to the questions that they have, and they want it when they want those answers in the way that in the order that they're asking them. And they also don't want a salesperson to, they don't want to feel a lot of pressure. They don't feel a lot of obligation to get those answers. And so, of course, that's my business.
Well, and what's interesting to me is, so where's the value, right? And I'm thinking selfishly from the salesperson's perspective, like where can I provide value in a world like this, right? Well, it's probably big, complex buying decisions, right? That is where a salesperson in this new world can provide the most value. Probably has always been where a salesperson can provide the most value. But probably, the gap between the value you can provide is probably never been greater. Especially when you come to the worlds of technology, right? What product is the right product for a $10 billion enterprise, right? Well, shoot, that's a really big decision. There's a lot of factors to consider. It's a long time to consider all those factors, right? And so, so the skillful salesperson or sales organization really should be able to spend some time with that person and not just be a gatekeeper, right? Or seen as the enemy, right? In my worldview of how it all should work, no one really should be totally beware of the other person, right? Ideally, we've got each other's interest in mind.
Right. No, I agree with that. I agree. So I will tell you that I see this in other ways, like even in simpler sales. So, I spoke to a group 2 weeks ago. I spoke to a big group of independent insurance agencies at they had a big virtual summit and great event, great organization. And so I gave 2 presentations. And one of the things that I talked about is, so there's this inevitable thing that I see when I see in businesses, and oftentimes these are going to be in businesses that are more kind of traditional professions in nature. So sometimes they're law firms or accounting firms. Occasionally, sometimes they're independent insurance agencies, but they normally have 1, 2, or 3, usually 3 partners, maybe 3 principals. And so what happens is one of them retires. So the oldest partner retires. He hangs it up. He's living by the golf course. He's hanging out with the grandkids. He's living the life. Well, the other 2 have still got some time left in their career, and they would like to maximize that. And so they're like, you know what? I think we need to get some new blood in here. And so they get a junior partner or junior associate. And so what happens is, inevitably, is junior partner, junior associate gets in, gets the lay of the land, gets 6 months into the job, and then he or she starts to have some ideas about stuff. And it oftentimes involves automating things and technology and like, how can we make things happen automatically and real easy? And it's like, we're going to replace a lot of the functions that we have, customer service, with like digital stuff on the computer. And the old guys, the senior partners, are like, whoa there, Sparky, our relationships are critical for our business. Like we've got these traditional professions, these lawyers and accountants and insurance agents, like their clients trust them and they've got long-term relationships. And so they're thinking all this technology is going to replace the relationships, not good for the business. And so what happens is the young guy keeps picking at the old guys about once every 2 or 3 months, says, we ought to look at the technology, look at the automation. And finally what happens, this happens for a couple of years. And finally the senior guys are like, okay, bring somebody in to talk to us. And who do you think that person often is? It's yours truly. And so I end up sitting at this conference table. I got the young gun over here. I usually have like a member of the support staff, like kind of sitting across from me. I think maybe just to make sure if there's a fight that breaks out, like they can get me out. And then you'll have the senior guys like over here on the left. And so what happens is the young kid, he brings me in. He thinks I'm going to tell these senior guys how the cow eats the cabbage about all the technology. And so one of the first things I have to do is turn to the young guy and be like, okay, sport, when your old guys over here say that relationships are super important, they're right.
Yeah.
Like they're right.
Yeah.
But then I have to turn around to the old guys and say, hey, old guys like me. I mean, I'm a gray beard, getting some gray in there. I mean, my fellow gray beard.
A little bit, bit.
I got to say to these guys, I'm like, so Sparky over here is not entirely wrong. And so the thing is that especially in these smaller kinds of organizations, the relationship is super important. Like that relationship is important. And I would say even probably in your business, the relationship that you have with your customers are important because they know they can trust you. You're responsive. You have talked to them, looked them across the table in the eye and shook their hand. Super important in sales. I think it's important in business. However, what technology gives us is convenience. And we really people we love it. Modern consumers, modern people, we want convenience. And so that's oftentimes the fight I see is it's like the older folks are like, no, we can't, no technology. We need, everything's got to be in person and it's the relationship. And you got this guy over here who wants it to all be technical and automated. And you kind of have to take each for what they are.
Well, and so yes, yes to all that or a lot of that, right? But one of the specific things in our world is, we talk about relationships. Relationships are key and critical. Everyone knows that. But really what that means is that if we tell you something from a technology perspective, you trust that what we say, right?
Absolutely.
Not necessarily that you trust it 100%. You're going to bet your entire business on it, right? Yeah. But the decisions that people have to make today in the worlds of technology at large enterprise in particular, which is the world that I work in for the most part, are extraordinarily complex, right? And specialized. And so that's why they need to reach out to someone who knows the latest and greatest about trends in the connected enterprise and API-led connectivity and all the rest of these things, right? It is really hard to know because what they're doing today, some Sparky 10 years ago told them that this was the latest and greatest thing, right? And they're doing the thing for the last 10 years that their 10-year-old Sparky told them, right? Yeah. Well, that 10-year-old Sparky now is a senior director or VP or maybe even EVP, right? And there's a new Sparky on the block, right? And so how do you develop trust with that new Sparky as well, right? And play out some of those things. Now, one of the other things I'd say on that trust side is, I'm a little bit of a Sparky, it's a little bit of the role that I play. You and I have got to admit that we both we're all the way Sparky. 15 years ago, I was the epitome of Sparky. I mean, I was the young buck, gotta do all things differently. Yep. So, but one of the things that I don't have, right? I have maybe 7 gray hairs in my beard, maybe 12, right? There's a tremendous amount of value in those relationships and the trust that some of the other more senior members of the team have, right? Yeah. But are we leveraging that, right? Are we finding a way to provide information? Are we doing that in an automated way? Are we doing that in a way that's easily consumed? Yeah. Are we doing it at the right times with the right content, right? So all of those are the kinds of things that. And I don't necessarily know what the perfect answer is for each one of those, right? I don't know the exact moment. I don't know the exact content, right? But I know that we have to try a whole bunch of stuff, right? Before we actually know what it is. because those folks need to solve problems, and we can solve some of their problems, but they may not know that we can solve them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So Big Danny Pink's book is the one that you're recommending, To Sell is Human. You can find that in bookstores everywhere, probably on Amazon. I'm guessing Big Danny Pink's on.
Or you can find that online, or you could probably listen to it. I would guess there's an audible.
Probably could. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you a book listener or a book reader?
Both. I do both. So I like to read. If I'm wanting to consume something quickly, like I need to there's a lot of urgency involved in it, then I'll read. It's like read fairly quickly, and so I can devour a reasonably good sized book in about 12 hours. And so if I really need to crunch it, I'll read it. But oftentimes now I'm finding myself, pandemic situation. So I'm, the majority of my life, like what I'm doing in my spare time, if I'm like, I'll go out for a walk outside, get some exercise. So I'll do, like, I've got an Audible,
Yeah.
I literally just got one. So a guy recommended this book to me, and that may be one we can talk about in a week or two after I read it. You may have read it as well. Let me find it's David C. Let me see here. David C. I feel terrible. I didn't have this prepared. It's about monetizing expertise.
Okay.
And so David C. Baker,
okay,
the guy's name. Yeah. It's about monetizing expertise. So very well-known entrepreneur around here in town that I've just recently made his acquaintance. He recommended that one to me just based on our conversation, kind of him knowing about our business. Yeah.
I'll put it on my list. I haven't read it.
Yeah. No, it seems interesting. I haven't started it yet, but it is definitely something that, is definitely just like it fits for me. Like, I think it's good. I'm excited about it. That's one, but I love to read. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So, yeah.
Well, so there's a bit of action happening in the world of acquisitions right now. That's a bit of a surprise to some folks. One
that is really kind of new and sticks out just the last couple of days. And that's, this obviously Salesforce is buying Slack, $27.7 billion deal. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, your old buddy, says your close friend, said, "This is a match made in heaven. Together, Salesforce and Slack will shape the future of enterprise software and transform the way everyone works in the all digital work from anywhere world." Unquote.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think he's right.
I think it's probably a good thing because, our company uses Salesforce. We use Slack. Those two are integrated only in really superficial ways right now for us.
Yeah.
Right. There are some integrations, but they're not deep. Right. Like, for example, as a salesperson, it would be great for me if every time we talked about one of our clients in Slack, which we do all the time and we take notes, right? Mm-hmm. How do I automate or integrate a channel, right, about a client into their account in Salesforce, right? Because that's where we're doing most of our internal comm, right? Instead of, let me copy and paste all these notes we had and put them back in there, right? So like from the pure technology and making my life as a salesperson easier perspective, I think it's a great play.
Yeah, no, I think it makes total sense. So what we do, we use Slack. So in my work environment, we use Slack, but I think you obviously are very, very aware that we're more in the HubSpot ecosystem.
What's HubSpot?
Exactly
what?
Right.
Okay.
So, just for people that don't know, like my company, Bridges Strategies and Digital Marketing, free plug. We are a very heavy HubSpot shop. We are actually we're a platinum provider. They've changed the name.
Platinum. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. We just tiered up. So
wow. Congratulations.
Pretty exciting. Yeah. No. And we're all kinds of it's really fun to be like, I'm in a couple of groups where, with the product, so like the product, the folks that are developing the product, I get to meet with those folks a couple times a month about particular projects that they're working on, and they use partners like me as a sounding board. And so it's awesome. It's really, HubSpot's done a really great job of getting their partners, I think, getting great feedback from us, but also we also feel really good. I feel good about the fact that they're going to roll something out sometime in the next year, in 2021, and they're talking to me about it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It really is. It's great buy-in.
Did Mark Benioff call you before they bought Slack?
No, he did not. No. So
okay, I was just curious.
I'm not nearly as close with Mark as you are, you know.
Right. Well, I work in the world of MuleSoft and MuleSoft Consulting, which is owned by Salesforce, of course. So, and you know, that interesting story about that acquisition. I don't think, you know, so I think, you know, one of the things that people watch right after a big acquisition like this happens, and it was a crazy high price, right?
Yeah.
It was, 25-30% premium over their kind of market cap, right?
It represents 14% of Salesforce's total value. So that's what the dilution will be. So just to give you an example, so to highlight that even more, back in 2016, Microsoft was taking a look at Slack and didn't pull the trigger, but kind of the price level, the level that they were looking at that time was $8 billion. Yeah. So this is 27.7, almost $20 billion more 4 years later, 5 years later. So
right. And I think it was 2018 they bought MuleSoft for something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for something like $4 billion or something like that, if I remember right. And at the time, I don't think like the stock price took off, because one of the things a lot of people pay attention to, right? You make a big acquisition. Right. Well, it's not really complete, right? It's announced, right? Yeah. You announce a big acquisition and you're hoping for something to happen with the stock price, right? Because sometimes if you get the right opportunity, like sometimes your stock pops and like you've made some of your money back already, right?
Sure.
But with this one, the stock has actually gone down like 15% or something in the last 4 or 5 days. So
right.
I do think there's a smart play. I think it's a long-term play. I think there's tremendous value there. And it's really possibly a whole different audience too, right? I first got introduced to Slack, which I should say my last name is Slack, but I am not related to the product.
I was wondering if you were going to get any of that money. Like
they did not, I had my lawyer send them a cease and desist with the letter unless they signed a licensing deal. They wouldn't do it. Yeah. That's a lie. I didn't do any of that. But I did start using Slack really because the grassroots tech community here in Oklahoma City used Slack, right? And so they were the first people that I got to know of that were using it. And I was like, holy cow, it like changed how I thought about so many things, and how we interacted. Right. And actually, I was a young Sparky. I've been a young Sparky for a while at a variety of different places. Right. Yeah. I'd go into a place and say, listen, we need a workplace chat feature, right? We need something to manage internal comms on email. So we don't have 1,000 emails. Yeah. And it got rejected, at multiple places and not embraced.
And you don't work there anymore.
And I don't work there anymore.
That's how that works.
That's how that works, right? Yep. Yeah.
You don't listen. If you're an organization, you don't listen to your smart people. The smart people are going to leave.
That happens sometimes.
It does.
Yeah.
So $27.7 billion deal, not bad for a company that was born out of a failed video game.
Yeah. Right.
Seriously. So when so that's the story is they were these guys were developing video games. It was a video game company called Glitch. And the video games didn't end up being viable, but the little in-house communication system that they built in order to facilitate their own work has worked out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and so, part of what's brilliant, right, about this, like Salesforce's strategy overall is they buy products that aren't necessarily used by their current customers. Right. Yeah. And so it's not just like, I'm going to go, buy a company that all my current clients use. I'm going to go buy a product that's used by this entire audience of people who I don't have access to. And now we're going to go and co-sell, right? And these are going to be lead generation activities. These are warm prospect lists. They might already have a relationship with some salesperson. Who is that trusted advisor? Who is that respected person, right? That can pick up the phone and they can call somebody and that person will answer the phone. Better yet, they're going to text them and say, hey, I want you to meet the Salesforce rep who's now aligned to us. And then they're going to sell them MuleSoft, and then they're going to sell them Tableau, right? And then they're going to keep going on and on. So it's pretty darn smart. So,
something you mentioned in there really kind of strikes a chord with me, because I feel like that one of the areas and I'm B2B sales, and you are too, like we're kind of B2B sales guys. So one piece of technology, one area channel where I feel like is ignored or does not given as much love as it probably should. from a B2B sales perspective is, and this is, I'm talking about HubSpot for sure, because like this is one weakness that I've been telling my guys at HubSpot. This is a huge, huge weakness for the B2B sales space in their CRM and sales tools. And that is being able to manage and execute text messaging and SMS and have it integrate, have it integrate seamlessly with the CRM, because that's how people like to communicate on a B2B basis. Like I'm probably the single biggest way that I communicate with folks who are ongoing clients with us are text message. And that's how they get me,
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because early in my sales, my first real sales job really was nonprofit fundraising, right? So I did nonprofit fundraising for a while, and I got, dirty looks at one point from someone when I was talking about texting with a donor, right? And it was a big donor. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean don't text with a donor? They were afraid it wasn't formal enough and we needed to be a little bit more professional and distance, pick up the phone, write them a letter. I was like, no, they're busy, right? They're busy. They need convenient communication.
That's exactly right.
They need it right there so they can respond right there, because they're busy. They're going to forget. And then they're going to be upset that they forgot, and they're not going to call me back because they're embarrassed, right? No, like let's get this going. And we get responses real time back and forth.
This whole thing goes back to the thing I'm talking about, convenience and relationship. Like they're not like, give people convenience. That's right.
Absolutely.
Man.
So I feel like I'm just on fire with ideas, or maybe it's just the light shining through my window and making my shirt glow.
It's awesome,
but I'm definitely
like
on
Green
fire.
Lantern, man. You like Green Lantern in the green. You're like Ryan Reynolds. You're I'm pretty sure that you are the best. You're the handsomest man in enterprise software sales. I'm pretty sure. So do you mind if we pivot into another one? There's another interesting kind of big tech business move that I'm really interested in, and I've kind of checked out, and that is Amazon getting into healthcare.
Oh yeah.
Super interesting. So Amazon Pharmacy, pharmacy.amazon.com. So the U.S. pharmacy market is worth $350 billion. $222 billion is retail sales to the consumer. And right now, like Amazon just flipped it on and they can serve all $220 billion, like the people that are associated with that. I went and tried it.
Did you really?
I signed up. I didn't do that. I haven't like ordered anything through there, and God knows I could, because I got the fat guy quinella of like all the pills. Like, wow. Seriously. Oh gosh. So like I got the blood pressure pills, and I got the diabetes pills and the diabetes shot.
Wow. Okay.
I probably should drink fewer of these.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but I got that. No, but I got.
How's your liver?
It's good. No, liver's good. Good. Pancreas sometimes a little sketchy. And then the sleep apnea. And I got another one I can't remember, but I'm like the old dude with the pill thing,
Right.
Like, so I'm single-handedly keeping the pharmacy industry alive is how I feel. So, but it's seriously easy to sign up. Like the user experience is incredible. And they're asking you, you have to get a lot of information. There's a lot of fields on the form. And they do a fantastic job of making the user experience really easy to get your insurance in there. And what's really cool is it's automatic. So like you literally just put whoever your doctor is or your primary medical provider. Mine actually is like a nurse. They call it a nurse practitioner. So you just put that person's information, or they contact the office and you're done. Like you're done. And they just start sending you your drug. You put your insurance in there. They start sending you your drugs.
Now, do they send it like in an Amazon Prime box? Does it show up at your door in a day?
I don't know that yet. And I kind of think not. I think it's probably, but I bet it's a couple days. I bet it's kind of the Amazon, what used to be the Amazon 2-day. During the pandemic, Amazon Prime can be like, 5 weeks, but I think it's fairly quickly. But here's the thing though. So that deal was announced on the 17th of November. And immediately the stock for GoodRx plummeted 20%.
Yeah. Came
back up to 14. Yeah. So the other one that I thought about was Blink Health, which is similar to GoodRx.
Okay.
For Blink Health doesn't have the insurance tie-in, or at least based on my experience. It's more of like, don't have insurance, you can get, really good prices. It's not publicly traded, but if it were, you got to think that it would have taken a. And so my questions are like, what I'm wondering is, I've got a local pharmacy that I go to. They literally are like 4 blocks that way. I walk down, I talk smack to the pharmacist, who's this old guy named Mac. who really needs to drink more, or he needs
Right.
to do something about his attitude. But I love him, and I love the people that work there. They're fantastic people. So I'm going to keep going there. Not going to use Amazon. But here's the thing, though. If Mac pisses me off, if Mac does something like just extremely over the top and makes me mad, I'm going to go to Amazon. And I'm wondering how many people are going to make that choice to choose convenience of the Amazon over the relationship with their pharmacy. So I think it's going to hurt the CVS's and the Eckards, or do they even have Eckards anymore? The Walgreens.
I don't know.
I think it's going to hurt those guys.
Right. So I think about like, how does this interrupt or change the buying process, right? So where in the buying process do you make a decision to get a prescription drug, right? And it's usually at an appointment, right? And so you go and you have an appointment, and your doctor says,
the doctor, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like, well, I take my kids in, and, we've got this rash. Oh, great. So I'll prescribe this specific thing. Where's your pharmacy? Right. And that's the moment when the decision happens on who gets the business.
That's a great point.
And that's the moment when I say, well, I go to the Walgreens at this intersection. They pull it up. Here it is. Great. So is it going to be, what's your pharmacy? Will I have Amazon? Right. And you say, well, I use Amazon Pharmacy. And so some of the logistics complications, right, of the buying process that, as a salesperson, part of my job is to make sure that's easy, right? If I say, well, I use Amazon Pharmacy, do they have to be set up in that? Are they set up in that at that point? How many times do I ask them before they get motivated and go do it? Or do I ask them and they say, no, I stay away from Amazon because I'm anti or whatever? Those are some of the logistical questions of actually completing a sale.
Yeah.
That's challenging. Like, how have they figured that out? Like, do they have a database of every prescription provider in the world? How does that actually get all linked up? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'll find out. I'm going to ask so when I go back to my, my primary provider, I have to go back. I have to go all the time because I'm like a walking fat old man with like all of the, as I mentioned before. So I'm
so generous to support the medical community. And, I know that's the primary reason.
Oh yeah. Right? The U.S. healthcare system gets a lot of my money, and that's why I'm holed up in a little corner. You see this lovely backdrop. Looks like I'm in my office. It's like super professional. I'm in a corner of my bedroom. It's not right. But no. So I think that there is we're going to see like a year from now. It'll be really interesting to look back on what has happened. So there's another piece of it. Besides just the pharmacies, like the pharmacies are what we know as consumers. There's another piece of it. So there are 3 companies there's been a lot of consolidation in this business that is actually between the pharmacy and the drug company. And they're called, they call them PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. So these pharmacy benefit managers companies, there's Express Scripts, CVS Caremark, and Optum. And so there's been a lot of some local legislative things that have happened in the past couple of years, and essentially, if you're getting a drug, if you're getting a prescription in the United States from a pharmacy, something like 85% of all of those drugs are going through one of these pharmacy benefits managers. And I think that's actually, it's more than it's more, at least as much as the pharmacies that are going to get disrupted. It's this.
Interesting.
Those guys. Yeah,
man. Well, so I don't know a tremendous amount about that world, right? But I do wonder about the average person who says, hey, at what point are we getting into robber baron monopoly territory, right? At what point are we getting to, I don't think
people care anymore. I don't think those folks. We've been way into robber baron territory for a long time. Like we're in the income inequality in our society is so high. Like it is. I mean, we're not like triangle waste fire. I'm familiar with that. Like kind of that was pre-union. Like it was kind of like the rise of like labor unions. Like I don't think we're there yet, but I kind of think we're halfway into robber baron territory where that's accepted. Like that, that's what I think. Yeah.
I think it's accepted in some ways, but I do think at some point, I think there will be a tipping point, right? I don't think we're there today, right? But that is one thing that went through my head as, I read about this and I thought, I felt conflicted. I felt like, man, Amazon with its operational efficiency, their emphasis on putting the customers first and tremendous customer service and everything with a customer in mind, of course they're going to do a better job. Right? That's my belief. Now, maybe that's their marketing spin and they've been really successful at that, but they're not actually good at the other stuff. But I think they probably are pretty darn good at it, right? Better than the average bear. And so I feel like, okay, that's great. I'm glad they're in that space. But at the same time, I'm like, should any one person hold that many purse strings, right? Should any one company hold that many purse strings, right? Icarus flying too close to the sun, right? At what point, or again, man, I'm going Bible thumper preacher here. The Tower of Babel, right? You create a tower that's so tall that it crashes, right? And all the folks in the tower perish, right? Like at some point, I am, as a business person who's growth minded, who's entrepreneurial minded, who's startup minded, and wants to grow something big and successful, right? And wants to be rewarded for that. At some point, you've got to wonder, is it healthy for one company to do all of these different things and manage all these different parts of your lives and the data related to all these different parts of your lives, right? Yeah.
No, it is. There are implications. There are, as the economists say, externalities that we have not thought of.
Which is a nice way of obfuscating reality, right?
Exactly. No, it's a euphemism
language,
for sure,
right?
Yeah.
Just like, when military people talk about smart bombs. Yeah. Oh, it's a smart bomb. That's great. No, it's killing people. Let's not think about that. I'm going to go back to our tequila talk, because I remembered something about tequila. When I was 22, 23, I'm a Teach for America Corps member in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Wow.
Yeah. And so I taught
you have purpose. You have like personal purpose in your life.
I did until I gave all that up to go in for myself.
I think you still do. I think you still have purpose, and that's impressive to me because I'm like low on purpose. Autonomy, yes. I got a little bit of mastery. I got no purpose.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I'm in Teach for America. I go out for drinks with these two guys that I teach with, and it's a pretty rare thing for me because I wasn't, necessarily a teetotaler, but I didn't drink very much. But we go out to this bar, and one of the guys I'm with, he orders just straight tequila, and he sips it, and he's like 22, 23, and I was like, that's a fucking cool thing. I was like, that's fucking cool, man. I want to be that cool. And I'm like, do you have any honey bourbon? Cause I really like that.
Honey bourbon.
I didn't quite have a sophisticated palate. I probably still don't. Right.
You're drinking good tequila. I mean,
there you go. Not bad.
So go ahead. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're going to talk about vaccines.
I really do. And here's the deal. And it's because I want people to remember this name. Like the name is, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. I'm probably not, but it's something along the lines of Catalin Carrico or Carrico. Catalin Carrico. She is a medical researcher who began studying the topic of messenger RNA back in the 90s. And so she theorized that if you could design your own messenger RNA, you could, in theory, hijack the body's internal protein making process in order to create any protein that you might desire. And proteins are like a building block of life. And so, so you could make proteins that would create antibodies to vaccinate against infection, obviously. You could create proteins that would reverse a rare disease. Or growth agents to mend a damaged heart tissue, or even potentially grow a protein that would attack and kill cancer. And so the companies, just so you know, so like it was a big deal. Like she was really like focused on this and couldn't get funding. She couldn't get people to pay attention to what she was doing. She lost academic positions because she was not willing to pivot off of this topic.
Interesting.
And so the first two vaccines that we think are going to get approval, like as of the time of this taping, this recording, like they're not approved yet, but we think that emergency authorization is going to happen in the next week or so for the two first vaccines, and they both use technology that has been licensed by her and her research.
Wow.
So, but like it's crazy. So this is what happened. So on January 10th, January 10th of 2020, Chinese scientists posted, they were able to sequence the virus's DNA. They posted it on the internet. And then using that information, the company, Moderna had their first version of this experimental messenger RNA vaccine on the way to a facility in Bethesda, Maryland for testing. So literally and it wasn't that long. It was within a month, 2 months or something.
Wow.
And so a lot of what I'm wondering is because, so we have there's been an unprecedented, or at least unprecedented in our lifetime, amount of focus and resources spent on developing these messenger RNA vaccines. And what I'm wondering is if the breakthroughs that were made as part of this thing doesn't turn into cures and treatments that are really groundbreaking for other important things like heart disease and potentially even cancer potentially. So I'm wondering if in 100 years we're not looking back at this lady, Katalin Karikó. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but I wonder if we're looking back at her kind of like Curie, like this or Louis Pasteur, or somebody who really was critical in improving the lives of people through science.
That's incredible. Now, where is she from? Where does she live? Where is she from?
So my understanding is she works for she's like a vice president for one of the two companies for the one BioNTech, the one that is teamed up with Pfizer. I'm not sure where she's from. I think she might be. I think she lived in the United States for a long time.
Got it.
I'm not sure what, maybe she may be U.S. I'm not sure. And I'm ashamed to say, as much as I'm impressed by what she's done and why I think she's really important, I don't know that much about her. So.
Well, isn't that how it goes, right? Oftentimes we are so impressed, we don't need to dive deeper, right?
Yeah.
We hear the little bit that we need to hear and it makes us fall in love, right? It makes us fall in love, honestly, with someone who has that kind of ambition and drive. Yeah. And says, even if everyone tells me no, I'm still going to push forward with this idea. That's a great idea. And I believe in it. Those people are ahead of their time and it's awesome. Right. Yeah.
I think the great thing about, the thing that I look back on is she endured, she lost jobs. She lost a job. She lost, she couldn't get funding for this. But she was a dog with a bone. She was dialed in and focused in on this particular thing. And that's super impressive. And again, I think history is going to remember her well if we're writing history correctly, most likely.
Okay. Can I tell you honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind, you telling me this story, and especially as part of history and remembering her, right? Yeah. As all that. Have you seen the movie Star Trek First Contact?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Great character.
Yes. Great character actor. He died recently, right?
James Cromwell.
Yes, he's the guy who invented the warp drive, right? And they have to go back in time following the Borg, right? Yeah. Because they defeat the Borg, but then this little capsule escapes. It goes time travel, goes back 70 years, whatever it is.
Sure.
Takes over Earth, right? And then they go back at that same time. The Enterprise E or whatever it is makes it through, and they find the guy who invents the warp drive. And they have to ensure that first contact still happens and defeat the Borg, right? And it just made me think about him being just totally being a drunk.
He was a drunk.
And being totally overwhelmed by the adoration of Geordi and everyone else who was like, this is where the statue of you sits, of you pointing at the sky, right? Yeah. Above your... where you launched your first, and I was thinking, man, I hope there's a statue of her, right? Where she's at her desk, and I don't know what scientists do while they're scientisting, right? Are they at a desk? Are they typing? Do they even have glass beakers anymore? I don't know, right?
That's pretty cool.
Software? I don't know, right? But there should be statues. There should be elementary schools named after the people who are doing these things. Yeah,
I agree. I wonder what was that? Do you remember that character's name? Wasn't it Hiram something or others? Hold on.
Gosh,
I got to Google it.
I think you have to Google it because I was trying to think of it as I was starting the story and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the actor's name.
I got it. No, I got it. James Cromwell, who's awesome, by the way. He was Zephram Cochrane.
Cochrane. Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, James Cromwell, fantastic actor. That's a great analogy. That's a super analogy about her. And I wonder, I hope that she gets I hope that she gets the attention that she deserves. So,
and I don't think probably in general, scientists are probably good at self-promotion, right? And so, someone who's probably innately gifted at self-promotion probably has a higher chance of getting that, right? So hopefully she's got the folks around her that are supporting and encouraging and knowing what it means to create a legacy.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, there are a couple other pieces in the news I want to mention, if you don't mind. Just move on a little bit to talk about. So this was a few weeks ago, but the Justice Department taking action against Google. Speaking of Google, I just Googled, Zephram Cochran's name. It's interesting. So it was the Department of Justice, 11 states attorneys general filed suit against Google. In the press release, they say monopolist. They call monopolist Google for antitrust violations in search and search advertising. The charges are entering into exclusivity agreements that forbid pre-installation of any competing search service, entering into tying and other arrangements that force pre-installation of its search application in prime locations on mobile devices, making them undeletable regardless of consumer preference. I think that's what happens on Android, right? I don't know. Yeah. I don't use Android. So entering into long-term agreements with Apple that require Google to be the default and de facto exclusive Google search engine on Apple's popular Safari browser and other Apple search tools, and the denouement, generally using monopoly benefits to buy preferential treatment for its search engine on devices, web browsers, and other search access points, creating a continuous and self-reinforcing cycle of monopolization. Kind of right.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, kind of right. Probably right.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed is that I was on my Google Calendar. We use G Suite, in my work. I think you guys do too, right?
So do I.
Yep. Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you notice, so we're Zoom. We use Zoom for conferences, and we're using Zoom for this right now, as a matter of fact. But one of the things I noticed is they're making it more difficult to use Zoom in the Google Calendar, like in that application. You're making it harder, and they're really trying to push everybody to their Google Meet service. And you would think, because they're freaking under, like the Justice Department's going after them, they would not do that, but they did, and they are.
Well, here's one of the interesting things, and this kind of goes back to the Salesforce Slack acquisition situation, which is all these technology companies are not trying to just provide one solution. They're trying to provide either your entire platform or your entire ecosystem of solutions.
Sure.
Right? And that's what businesses oftentimes want. Yeah. Oftentimes businesses make a decision, right? We're a Microsoft shop. That means we're going to be Office, we're going to be Teams, we're going to be Dynamics, we're going to be .NET development, right? We're going to do all these things. We're going to use Azure, right? And is that monopolistic? Well, they built in ways to make it easier. They're solving business problems, right? Yeah. And so in that same way, man, if I'm using Google for my email and Google for my calendar and Google for my video calls and Google for my note-taking during those video calls, it makes sense that all those things would work together very well. And so from the consumer's perspective, right, sometimes you're welcome that, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because, man, so I think even I think there's even settings you can turn on and off that make a Google Meet, right, their video conference service, automatic or default when you send a calendar invitation, even if you didn't select it or want it, right? And then you have to go in and realize, oh, no, wait, we're meeting in Applebee's, not on this video
and you have
call,
to change that.
You have to change that, exactly.
You have to, but not just the normal, maybe you could do it, but not the normal user.
The administrator.
It's got to be the administrator.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I did that, by the way. I turned that crap off.
You turn that crap off. You don't like it?
Absolutely. No.
Yeah. Well, because we're in pandemic times, it saves me some time, right?
I bet
if
it does.
I'm sending a calendar invite, right? You don't think about it, but one extra click. But if you're doing 7 meetings a day, that's 7 clicks per day that I'm not doing. That's actually helpful. 5 days a week, 35 clicks times 50 weeks in a year. You're talking about 1,500 clicks.
Yeah.
That one decision has saved me.
We have a term for that. It's called cumulative hassle.
Oh yeah.
There's
absolutely.
a point at which, the informal term, they ain't teaching that in the Stanford Business School. But
okay.
cumulative hassle is this idea of like, how much hassle, how many things do I have to fill out? How many clicks do I have to make? And there's a point at which it gets to be too much. And it's like, it's too much.
Absolutely. Right. And so how do we solve those problems? Right. And so take it back to sales, right? My solution, right, reduces your clicks. Well, I'm going to buy that solution. Right. Yeah. And so you think about that investment, for example, in G Suite, right? You think about how nominal it really is compared to other enterprise software applications and suites out there. Right. Yeah. But probably because they're making their money on search and all these other things that they're tying you into, it's icing on the cake for them.
Yeah. And I'm looking at and I'm listening to people about kind of how we think that potentially the Justice Department could dictate, could dictate some breaking up of Google. Like, are we going to get a Bell, like an AT&T Bell style breakup? You're probably not old enough to remember that. And I'm just barely old enough to remember when AT&T was broken up into the baby bells or the regional bells. That was a huge deal.
Yeah.
So I think kind of one of the things that I see is that potentially they could undo some of what they would consider, the Justice Department would potentially consider to be their uncompetitive mergers. And that was the YouTube acquisition. So decoupling YouTube. I think that's probably potentially one that Google would put lower on their list of things if they have to do one, if they have to divest, just because we're seeing YouTube is so incredibly integrated into the core search now. Like, if you search for any kind of anything, odds are your top results, you're going to end up with a video, like in that featured snippet, that little box at the top. DoubleClick, which is an advertising, that's kind of a back end ad platform. Waze. Mapping and crowdsourcing traffic information, and also Nest. So, Nest, so I think we could see potentially the end of this being that the Google is going to divest one or more of those. And I'm saying the arguments for breaking up is that obviously it opens the door for smaller companies to compete and deliver more diverse innovation. I don't know. I wonder, from your perspective, kind of working in the software field, enterprise software, if do you have a feel for if Google is broken up significantly, is there more opportunity, like for smaller, more innovative companies? I don't know.
So I mean, yes, it's possible, right? But if Google is broken up, so I'm going to go backwards. Some people are building their small innovative companies with an eye towards acquisition by Google, right? So like that's, that would be more the trend that I see, right? People are thinking, okay, I'm gonna build this business. I'm gonna do it for 5 years, and then I'm gonna find a buyer, right? Yeah. Especially in the product space, software product space, right? So it's kind of counter to what the individual entrepreneur or group of early investors are really looking for. They're looking for the 2 to 5 year big multiplication event, right?
Yeah.
So if they break off, the products that they're breaking off are already significantly enough. I mean, from my perspective, the ones that we're talking about, they're already significantly developed as independent businesses that they're already dominant players in the marketplace, right? So there will be some folks who will try to, compete with them, but I don't necessarily see it as being hugely disruptive. Then again, I'm just a simple guy from Oklahoma who's been in the enterprise software world for 3 years. And long history as a do-gooder and teacher and fundraiser. So there's a lot I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so some of the arguments that I'm seeing for not breaking up. So Google, in their response, like what they're saying is that Americans don't want Google broken up. Like consumers don't want that. And I think there's some good argument to that. I mean, I'm an SEO guy. Like, fundamentally, like what I do for a living, I mean, I do other stuff, but like my core competency outside of B2B sales is in search engine optimization. I make stuff rank on Google. And I'm telling you that when it's just Google, and that's the only one you got to kind of build for, it's actually kind of simplifies my life. Now, I've got some colleagues in the SEO world that would completely disagree with me because when one player has got so much power, arbitrary things can really kind of mess stuff up for you. one of the other things is Google is very, very good at understanding what people are searching for and giving it to them in the very best way possible. And one of the ways we see that is when you do Google a how-to question and that YouTube video pops up, like that is, they do that for a reason. It's because people want that. So
one of the challenges behind the scenes that I'm just fascinated at how they've solved or how they're trying to solve, or if they haven't been able to solve, is I don't think the average person or even the above average person probably has a really good sense of how much data they actually generate or capture through their daily business activities, right?
Sure.
And the challenge that is, what the heck do you do with that much information, right? Like, it is so overwhelming, the amount of information that must be generated. How do they actually make sense of it, right? And so the competency of, and I imagine that's probably, as a company, one of their most distinctive competencies, right? Or it should be, if it isn't, but I imagine it probably is, how they make sense of that data, which is something that none of us on the consumer end see or think about, right?
Right.
But it's actually probably how they provide the most value to the marketplace, how they provide the most value to themselves and shareholders, is they can somehow organize, understand, respond, react to all that data. I don't know how they do it.
You know, one of the things I have conversations often with folks that are kind of in the pretty early stage startup in the digital space, and oftentimes still the long-term value that they're looking at, that they believe that they can generate with their companies, is not necessarily kind of the monthly recurring revenue from fees from users or from, you know, folks that are directly accessing the functionality of their apps. It's actually being able to turn around and aggregate that data.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not talking about invading anybody's privacy and, you know, linking people's identity with advertiser IDs or anything, but aggregating that data and then being able to provide that data at a fee to the industry. And I'm seeing that a lot. Like, I'm seeing that in multiple conversations that I'm having is the data is where the long-term value.
It's a significant selling point in my regular world, which is the idea of an API economy. So API meaning application programming interface, right? So it's simplified. It's a piece of software that's going to grab information from one application and then help deliver it to another application and then return that favor, right? Depending on how it's written. Mm-hmm. And so monetizing APIs, monetizing the data that's in your database by putting an API in the front of it and allowing someone else to access it for a fee is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity in the economy, because so many people have so much data. And that's why Google has this distinctive competency, right? And, you know, Google making money off of accessing their Maps API, that's a source of revenue, right? That the average person doesn't necessarily see, but a lot of businesses make use of, right?
Yeah.
Well, Google's just so far ahead of the curve. There's so many other companies that if they could, right, expose that data in a way that could be monetized, right? And people understood what that data was, they made it easy. That's tremendous growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Well, I think we've gone for a while here.
We have gone for a while. We've gone for 42 minutes. No, wait, did we start at 3? No, an hour, gosh. 72 minutes.
Yeah, we've gone for a while. We probably ought to wrap this bad boy up, put a bow on it.
We should put a bow on it. And, you know, in our infinite wisdom, I don't think we figured out how we were going to close.
No, your go-to closing technique.
Oh, yes. We're going to close by talking about closing.
Yeah. So you're the expert at this. I'm not. So it's all you.
Best case scenario, the client closes themselves, right? You've set everything up. They know what they want. They say, when can we start, right? Let me sign. Yep. I want to sign. I want to start, right?
Yeah.
But I'll say one really simple one, right? It's an old school one, but it's a really simple one, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the idea of a thermometer close. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I don't think so. I missed that one.
Thermometer close. So
what kind of thermometer is it? Is it a rectal thermometer?
Yeah, it's a rectal thermometer. Yeah, no, it's like a 1 to 10, old school looking thermometer with what is it, mercury, right? That warms up and goes up, right? So it's an old school thermometer. You say, listen, based on the conversations we've had today, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely for sure, and 1 being definitely not. How likely are you to listen to this podcast again?
-4.
-4. Okay. Will you help me understand why you're a -4, right?
Oh, I like that.
And so, so then they can give you some reasoning, and then you can find out, well, is this something I can do or not, right? And ideally you're at a 10, right? And if you're at a 10, then great, let's put papers together and let's get it signed, right? But if they're at a 5 or a 6 or even a 7, you say, well, tell me why you're there, and then is there anything I could do that could make it a 9 or 10? So
cool. I love that. I'm stealing. I'm totally using that. This is going to be like sales training for Jake right now. So I'm going to give you my one. This is my one closing technique. It's terrible. And it's something I learned a long time ago from an advertising salesperson. Which, by the way, selling advertising, especially traditional ads, not so much. But anyway, this is what she would say. Yell on the phone. And she would say, so you get the phone here. She'd say, yin, yout.
What's that?
Which one are you? Yin, are you in or you out?
Yin, yout.
Yin, yout. No, but I think
that's the technique. That's it.
That's it, man. No, but I think all seriousness, like it just closes. It's like a natural thing. It should just kind of happen. The question, though, I will say there's a good question that I often ask at the end of a sales call that helps me. That it really helps understand kind of, because oftentimes in our world, the biggest challenge is not so much if they're looking to hire us or hire 5 other people. They're normally looking to hire us. Like they're talking to us for a reason.
Yeah.
And so normally the question that I'm asking is about timeline, because it's like when, like, what's the timeline? Like, when do you have to get this done? And then if they're like, well, we're not 100% sure, then the next question for me is going to be, well, what happens if you don't make a change in 6 months? Like if you don't pull the trigger within, like, what's going to happen in 6 months? Like, what's the cost of inaction?
Right.
And that oftentimes, and again, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not as far as like being a salesperson, I like these kinds of closing techniques. I'm not good at them. I don't, I try to work really hard, and I think I'm good at all of the sales process up to that point. But as far as like just closing a deal, it's just like yin yout,
yin yout.
Like here it is. We got all the information. We've talked, yin yout.
Well, you shouldn't be too hard on yourself because you are a successful entrepreneur. I mean, look at that banner behind you.
I know, right?
Like a guy.
$380. $380.
Right. Oh my gosh. Some guy, if you've got $380 for that, right, things are going right.
This has been really fun. And I hope that this is the first of many of these that we do in the future.
Absolutely. I hope so too. It's been a lot of fun. Time's flown by.
It has.